Some sound. What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday. Let me know if you can hear that now. Talking, playing, all that. What's up, everybody? What's up? We're going to do a little Q&A today, a little impromptu Q&A. Thank you for being here. My name is Peter Martin, and just wanted to see if you can hear. Yeah, you can hear. I got the sound going. Smooth jazz playing. Oh, we got some questions already. Yeah, I just wanted to see if I could help anybody out. You know, you ask the questions, I give the answers. Maybe I'll ask a question, you'll give an answer. Who knows? But whatever you guys want to talk about, piano, music, life, all that kind of good stuff. I hope you're doing well. Hope that you're healthy. I'm excited to be here as always. We got this going on. What? Keyboard, can you see the hands there? Yeah, there we go. E flat. It's been kind of an E flat morning. All right, let's get right into the questions. Tyler is asking, how can I make time to practice when I'm working 30 plus hours a week and going to school? Well, you know, I always think about, in terms of making time, I think if you take some things away, you just have to kind of prioritize. And once you get into a good groove, I think, with practicing, where it's productive, and you not only feel like you're getting better, you actually are getting better. You can feel that, hear that, and experience that every day. Then it gets easier to prioritize because it becomes something that you really want to do. You know, it's like exercise, and once it gets past like the pain and becomes part of your lifestyle, and you're like, wow, I need to exercise every day because I feel so much better. It impacts so many parts of my life. I think of practicing very much the same way. So we want to think about effective practice skills. That's what we're talking about here at Open Studio all the time. Trying to be efficient, but even more important than efficient is just being effective with your practice so you can really fall in love with the process. Now, in terms of finding time to do that, 30 hours, how many weeks are there? Let's see. I mean, how many? We got 7 days times 24. We got 160 hours. Is that right? 160 hours in the week? Yeah. And let's take out 8 to sleep, right? That's 96. And then you take out 30. All right, I lost track already. But you'll see what I'm saying. Eat, sleep, and you got 30 hours of work. You still got a number of hours left in order to practice. Effective practice can really be done an hour a day. We talk about actually some programs where in 20 minutes a day you can make progress. But I mean an hour a day. If you are focused, you have your notifications off, and you really have an hour to practice, you can make huge strides within a week, within several weeks, and once you get into that groove. So that's only 7 hours a week. I would say don't think about taking a day off with practicing. It's better to practice like an hour a day for 7 days, if it's effective, than to do 5 days, 2 hours each of those days, semi-effective, and then take 2 days off where you kind of got to get back into the groove. I'm very much a believer of like interacting with being a part of the instrument. If I go a day, well, it just doesn't happen anymore. Sometimes when I was traveling a lot in the past, there would go a day where I wouldn't touch a piano, still engaging with music. But I think that you start to see, so then when you say 1 hour or even 2 hours a day, what can you take away? Is that Netflix? Is that scrolling social media? Like, you'd be surprised at how much time we spend on things that may not be as important to you when you look back on a week as, say, practicing an hour a day. So don't try to be like, how do I practice 30 hours this week? Leave that for another time. How do I practice 7 hours this week? Take 7 hours out of that, whatever it was. Was that really all it was? 168, 24 hours a day times 7. Yeah, 168 hours. We're just looking for 7 hours of that to practice. And you can make huge strides, all right? So find some things that you can take away. Tyler, hopefully that helped. Sound might be muted. I think we got unmuted, right? I'm looking at the top. Duncan, thanks for getting back to me about the student discount. Absolutely. All right, I'm going to try to go from top to bottom, from older to newer, because sometimes I'm not great about that. Freder says, Christian McBride demonstrates nice linear bass lines without making big jumps, but sometimes I see piano players making a big bass note jumps. What's your philosophy? Well, you know, I don't have a hard and fast rule with this. It needs to be whatever sounds good and whatever works for the situation. So we can certainly play things that on the piano that a bass player cannot play. Like, for instance, all those notes, unless they have a C extension. So those are the most obvious, and then probably from somewhere around here up. So now, do we want to walk bass lines there? Probably not. But when we walk bass lines, do we have to follow all the instrument physical rules of a bass? Not at all. We need to play what's going to sound good. In fact, I think the quicker we get away from trying to duplicate what a bass does, the better. Because no matter what we do for bass lines, it's never going to be as good as a bass. And the more we make it sound like a bass, the more it's going to make people miss a bass. So I like to think about things that work good in that bass range, but that are piano. So yeah, sometimes, although, I mean, certainly a bass player could easily do that. You know, some quick jumps and stuff, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Linear, you're talking about, Christian talking about linear bass lines. That's the melodic flow of what a bass player does, but just like with any melody, what you play after that line can excuse you from doing some big jumps. So getting more to a funk bass line, but you know what I'm saying? It's like you can do a lot of jumping around depending on, now can you do? Make it sound linear, that's a little bit harder. So it needs to be in the flow of the music, but I think there's always a dramatic thing you can do that. That's still linear, right? Now, can a bass player do that? Christian McBride probably can, maybe not anybody else. And then, you know, because there's certain things on the bass, like, so, you know, here's the bass player's G string, and he or she can hit up to these harmonics here, but we're not really, so it's got a different kind of sound, but we're not thinking about that on the piano. We might know that, but it's not going to come off sounding the same. So nothing wrong with adapting it for your instrument. Harper's asking, want some tips for smooth playing. How do you get that amazing smooth thing you do with grace notes and other super melodic lines? You know, I don't know if it's smooth. I'm not sure if you mean like smooth. I thought you meant smooth jazz, but maybe you don't mean smooth jazz. I was about to get insulted there. No, not at all. But smooth playing. Yeah, phrasing, right? So things that we want to play faster or in more unexpected ways, more spontaneously, in the flow of a performance or improvisation, we need to figure out a way to prepare as best we can for doing that and succeeding with that sound that we want without preordaining exactly what we're going to play so that it sounds contrived. So what that means is we can't necessarily practice all the possible phrases we're going to play and the melodies we're going to create because we want it to be spontaneous. But we can practice getting our hands at the keyboard into the position and having the technical tools available to us to be able to execute those, if that makes sense. So what that means is, Let's see. So whatever you would consider smooth in this, I'm doing. And you're talking about grace notes. If I play that slow, I'm really trying to hear that. So I'm trying to hear those in certain situations and get acclimated to what that feels like. So when you get into the faster kind of flurry, and you want to do that smooth, you know, we're thinking about taking the things that we work on with scales, even when we're playing them slow, and thinking about our wrist. Can you see this in the overhead a little bit here? We're moving up very smooth. I'm pushing myself up just so you can see. Wait, do I have another camera angle here? What? Can we see that? Yeah, okay, so here we go. So we're moving up, and the idea is if we're playing a scale, we're leading a little bit with our wrist. If we're playing an arpeggio, same thing. If we're playing broken thirds, we're not, you know, this and that and that, all that kind of stuff. So that when we play a line, so that like we're still doing that smooth movement, and then when you go up to here, like it's still smooth, like we're in a position to be able to execute there. A lot of times, you know, we think about lack of execution or not being able to play with the kind of velocity that we want to as like a finger thing, but a lot of times it's a hand, getting your hands to the position so that then your fingers can actually execute on what you want. And then the grace note. Think about as you practice these, and you might take a slow boost. Think about experimenting with not, but, and. Like, it doesn't have to always be the exact same volume. Like a grace note can be, the grace note has the accent. Either the grace note has the accent or the note it's going into. Or if you got a couple of them. Because that all affects the, you know, ultimately the sound I think you're going to want to have. Great questions. Thank you guys. Thanks for being here, everybody. Hope you are well. I'm Peter Martin, if you don't know me. Hey, you know what? If you're liking this, give this video a thumbs up, because that'll like get it to more people, maybe even now that are happen to be looking around on YouTube for something you know, that might be helpful to them. So give it a like. Thumbs up. Let's see. Drop your questions in here, please. Oh, okay, we got a bunch. I gotta catch up. Whoa. Smooth playing, we did that. Okay, what's up, Richard? I'm a freshman at William Patterson, and I'm starting to explore tunes with interesting changes by Monk and Shorter. How do you approach tunes of theirs with interesting changes in chord progressions? Yeah, so Thelonious Monk and Wayne Shorter composition is very different, but we want to look for concepts that bind them together stylistically and compositionally different. Obviously, Wayne Shorter influenced by Monk, certainly, but the things that are in common, because this can always help us as we're you know, coming up with approaches to learning these kinds of really great compositions that have all these details, is those great details. So they both have really good details. So we bring that concept, you know, if we're thinking about Thelonious Monk's Ruby My Dear. What are the details? Okay, so, well, there's so much here, but let's just take the first chord. Like, if you get this voicing as opposed to just being like, like sus or something. Like, what is this? What's doubled? And, you know, like, what's the actual thing? And then where does it resolve? Major 6, flat 9 with just 3 notes. Those details, getting inside of those and setting yourself up to really learning the tune, important. Same thing with Wayne Shorter. Ooh, my piano's going out of tune. Infinize. E flat major here, not like I hear a lot of people playing sharp 11. I'm going to show you why. Out of the 4, A flat. Wait, I'm sorry, G flat major. Oh yeah, okay, so then we come to the bridge. Then you get the E flat major. So there's a continuum with that tune that if you play, there's nothing wrong with playing the major 11th there, that Lydian sound, but Wayne doesn't play it. And if you wait until you get to that bridge, it's such a better payoff when it's actually in the melody. And then you got the, you know, so those kind of details as you're learning these tunes is very important. A tune that I just did a lesson on this morning, September in the Rain. I mean, you know, I'm not one to be like, you got to learn it exactly like the original, but I did go back and listen to like the Dinah Washington version, the Frank Sinatra version, of course the Roy Hargrove version, who I first played this with a lot. There's variations in there. It's a standard. We're taking that, we're adapting it, we're having fun with it, we're playing with it. Wayne Shorter, Thelonious Monk, we can do that after we really know the tune. Grace notes. But we want to learn the original like as accurately as possible, the rhythms, those exact, like when does it go to the sharp 11? Don't just play it because you can play it. Like think about, is there a reason for it? So I would just say be very detail oriented, not dogmatic necessarily, maybe a little dogmatic, but very detail oriented as you learn Monk's tunes and Wayne Shorter's tunes, and that'll really be, will reward you in terms of learning those compositions but also being able to perform them. Good stuff. Good luck at William Patterson. Great school. How can I practice 2-finger runs? I mean, I don't necessarily do a lot of these. What is a 2-finger run? Like that? Maybe 1-3? You know, I'm usually trying to adapt and use 4, if not 5 fingers as much as possible. And any kind of runs that you do, I think do them in thirds, you know, fifths. Not necessarily this fast. You know, I'm always saying practice slow, and then I just go blah, 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 because I just want to show it. But we're not necessarily working out the fingerings for these, but we are thinking about avoiding that going up because we don't want to get that wrist all out of position. And I'm just going up a Lydian dominant as opposed to just boring. Right? But yeah, I don't do a lot with just 2-finger runs. I would say 3 or 4, at least, if not 5. I mean, within this, you're seeing I'm using all 5 at different times. 1, 3, 5, 2, 3, 4, 1. Kind of on the fly, whatever's going to keep my wrist in the best linear position so that I can execute. It's like what we were talking about earlier. The key to executing that, not only being able to play it whatever speed, but being able to do it with the kind of phrasing you would. That becomes important when you're like. But the key to that is having some pretty good instincts that are built up over practicing and challenging yourself with creative scale practicing to really get your fingering locked in, not pre-planned, but fingering concepts, keeping your thumb off those black keys as much as possible, getting that wrist movement in a super linear fashion. Hey, thank you for the likes. I'm starting to get excited about the thumbs up. I'm not big on the what do you call it? Facebook thumbs up. Facebook's been pissing me off. But on YouTube, it's fun because it spreads the love around. Hey, thank you guys for the super chats. That is a good way to get to jump to the front of the line for your question, just to let you know. Nobody feel obligated to do that, but I certainly can see it. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate that. Your love and enthusiasm for teaching at piano. You and Adam have really inspired me to work. Great, good stuff. Great to hear it. I will pass that along to Adam, who has been killing it as well in his guided practice. He said there may be some of his daily guided practice session folks here today, which is always cool. Okay, my thing is stuck now. Sorry. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, I'm going to go back up and try to catch some more. Freder, thank you too for the super chat. Thank you. Thanks very much. Really enjoying your lessons. Great stuff, man. I really appreciate it, brother or sister. Okay, I'm jumping back up. Boom, boom, boom. Apologize if I missed something. They're coming in quick now. They're coming in quick. That was 2-finger runs. How to practice Arctatum fast licks. Any tips? Yeah, transcribe some of his stuff. Try to get as much like, I never recommend just taking one lick, but you can. But maybe try to scale it out at least to like a phrase or like a chorus would even be better. This all depends on time. But like, the one I remember learning, and I learned the whole thing, the Willow Weep for me. It gets you some cool stuff, but everybody knows him for the, all that kind of, those like long linear runs. But he had so much great arranging stuff and voicings and stuff. So if you can, and there's a good transcription book you've probably seen. Obviously, I always try to recommend doing it by ear as much as possible because I'm bitter I didn't have a lot of those books. When I was coming up, there were books, but I just didn't have them. But my ear got trained really well by having to learn a lot of stuff. It was slower and not as accurate maybe, but having to learn it straight off the recordings. But in general, once you get to those lines that are hard to play, once you get them transcribed or you're reading them off there, break them down, practice them slowly. So, let's see. Like one that he might do is where he's kind of ripping up down to top, which I always feels like harder than top to bottom. So you might say that's the basic shape. So yeah, you can see that in the overhead. So you as opposed to just and seeing how good you can do it, you don't need to practice it at that speed. In fact, it's counterproductive to practice because the keys to these runs, again, is getting your wrist, getting your hand, getting your arm into position. So you might play it as a voicing, and you're going to go up 4 octaves. So you see how quickly you can not play it, but how quickly you can get your hand into position. So this is about being able to do it when you're looking and then being able to do it by feel as well, right? So I've got my eyes closed now. Ooh, missed that one. Missed that one. So I'm coming up a little short. So now I'm going to go again. Now I know I got it. Now I know I got it. I thought I had that one too. 3 out of 4. So now I've got something to practice. When you're failing at something and you've broken it down, now you know you got something to practice. So now I know I'm cutting short as I go up. So if I don't stop and figure this out, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to miss that last one because I'm going to pull back. Because as my arm's extending, I'm misjudging that distance. So I'm still not there, so I'm short. Take my time. Still short, okay. I got my eyes closed. Still short, so. All right, so now I'm starting to get it. So that's the way you can practice these, get them into shapes that you can move around. So that one, still it can be a shape. You might say, oh, that's too many notes. Same thing, I would take that, make sure I can feel it. eyes closed. This will take a little bit of time for some of you depending on where you are, but it definitely gives you a target of what to work on, getting your hands into those positions. And then you've got a smaller amount to practice in terms of the notes, and it starts to kind of make more sense and not seem like such an insurmountable, just breaking it down into smaller pieces. Cool. What's up, Kyle? Hi, Peter. I'm a guitar instructor for students of all ages. Most of them are either into country or rock. I've always had a tough time getting my students interested in jazz. Any tips? I mean, I think playing, great recordings or, videos that are great, Kind of Blue, KOB as we started calling around here, is I think a good one, but it's not the only one. I would say like, a record that I like, Wynton Marsalis's Black Coats from the Underground. That wouldn't be the one, as great as that record is, and as much as I love Kenny Kirkland and everybody on that, I wouldn't say that's the first one. Something about Kind of Blue is just, there's an accessibility and a love for that from musicians, from listeners alike, that I think it's just a great place to start. I feel weird recommending because it's like, 60-something years old now. That doesn't mean it's bad, but it kind of gives people the impression that that's like the last great jazz record, and it's not. So there's other recordings certainly that you could play that are more recent that are great, but just kind of the highest quality, most accessible recording along those lines, just a great iconic record, I think is the way that you get people into this. Now, not everybody's going to gravitate towards this, but that's our best thing. It's like, how do you get people into like, French nouvelle cuisine? I don't even know what I'm talking about, but it sounds fancy, right? So it's like, how do you do that? Well, you probably want to find the best quality, most accessible dish on the menu or that the chef can make to bring somebody in, as opposed to something that's a little bit harder nut to crack, that kind of a thing. So I think you just play the music and you see who comes to it. You can't force it on them. Now, with guitar, did you say guitarists? Yeah, guitar instructor. A lot of times, so you might want to check out Rick Beato's YouTube channel, which you probably know about. But sometimes, like somebody like that, like he had a great video, not really just for bass players, but he's talking about Niels Henning Ørsted Pedersen, one of the greatest bass players, played with, Danish great phenom as a teenager and everything, played with Oscar Peterson. Great bass player. He did a random video, Rick Beato, on him showing some and explaining kind of what made him so great. Those kind of things can be accessible. So I don't know if he's done it with, I'm sure he's done it with some jazz guitarists, but Rick Beato is very good at bringing people in, because he kind of comes out of the rock world and the pop world. I mean, he was a pop producer, but he's also a musicologist, but he has this great love of jazz. So he's very good at kind of introducing in a very simple way, but not necessarily simplistic way. And I think has a good concept, certainly better than mine, towards that world and saying, okay, what is the best jazz to kind of introduce them? And then sometimes stuff like Weather Report, that brings you into Wayne Shorter, which might bring you into Wayne Shorter's Blue Note records, which maybe brings you into Joe Zawinul, which brings you to Cannibal. Like there's connections you can make that are easier than just going cold turkey into it. So I would explore those. But definitely check out Rick Beato's jazz videos. And you got to look hard in his channel, because he usually doesn't put jazz in the title to them, because he said that like YouTube shuts it down. And I didn't shut it down, but doesn't spread it as much when you say jazz, or because people see that and they're like, that's not what I want. But they may want it. They just don't know that they want it. So, what's up, Duncan? As a community college student, I feel very dissatisfied with my jazz education from my professors. How do I take my professors' jazz teaching seriously when they teach the suburban blues? Well, I like that, suburban blues. I think we might have talked about that on the podcast. I mean, look, this is the thing. Everybody's, jazz is no different than classical music or rock or philosophy or neurology or neuroscience or practicing law, or basically anything that you would go to school, college, high school, university, specialized school, conservatory, to study. There's going to be good teachers, there's going to be bad teachers, and I think that those are both rare, actually, and then there's going to be a whole bunch in between, and there's going to be a spectrum there. So you're not going to be the first one to come across, whether it's a community college or if it's Berklee College of Music. Your odds of coming across a teacher that teaches the suburban blues are going to be high, and you got to deal with that. We've all dealt with that. So we have to take responsibility, especially I think once we get really 17, 18, 16 years old, high school, going into college age, we have to take responsibility for our own musical education. So what it becomes is you have to be discerning about what you're getting out of a situation. Just because your professor or teacher is teaching you the suburban blues, so maybe he or she's not the one to learn the blues from. You figure that out. That's being discerning. But maybe they have something else for you that you need to know. So that's up to you to figure that out and then to go after them. Like, you're paying them through the school, maybe through scholarship, financial aid, whatever. It doesn't matter. You're the customer. So there's something there, most likely, for you to learn from them. You've got to find out. You've got to take responsibility to figuring out what that is. Don't ask them about the blues or whatever. Don't be rude and be like, you don't know nothing about the blues. But maybe they know about technique. Maybe they know about how to learn some advanced harmony that you don't understand. Generally, everybody's got something that they know that you don't know, especially when they're older. Maybe you're just going to learn from them how to not play the suburban blues. That's valuable, That's just as valuable. So I think it's all in your mindset. Like, we never want to go into a situation. And, look, I've been around on both sides as far as teaching and as a student and having children at various ages, mostly at the collegiate age and still in high school too and beyond now. I've experienced elite level conservatories and universities and stuff and high schools and very non-elite and everything in between. So I speak from some experience, not the greatest amount of experience, but I have experienced these different things. Getting questionable instruction happens at a lot of different levels, more often than not. When I was at Juilliard School of Music, and this is not to disparage Juilliard at all, I was there a long time ago, 30 plus years or whatever, 32 years ago. There was very little accurate jazz education, as in zero, well, maybe not zero, that I got there. Now, they didn't have a program really at that time, but I mean, Miles Davis had gone through there like 40 years earlier or something, whatever, I don't know. So, I mean, there's some history. Wynton Marsalis, Christian McBride, I mean, like a lot of great jazz players have gone through there. But they were very late to the game with that, and everybody's like, Juilliard, and now everybody, Juilliard Jazz has the best teachers and everything. Yes and no. They've got some great things happening there, but every place, it's always easy to look at another situation and be like, oh, they don't teach the suburban blues there. Yes, they do. Somebody does. And so it's all kind of your mindset, though. Just go into it knowing that you're responsible for your development every day. And you're also responsible to getting something out of the situation. If there's truly a teacher or professor that has nothing for you and you're sure of it, then they need to be removed because they're not teaching anything. But more likely, as the student, as the younger person, or not even as the younger person, just as the student, it's up to you to kind of develop that discernment. So like, how can I take advantage of this situation to learn something, to take the development, then to use the resources, if that's online, if that's on YouTube, if that's from recording, so many different resources beyond the traditional educational routes that we need to use to enhance our musical education, okay? And best of luck. Duncan, and how can I suggest to them that they're not teaching jazz effectively? I mean, just be careful with that, because one woman's effective jazz teaching to another man's effective jazz teaching is different, right? And it's not necessarily your place to tell them that, but it is your place to find out what you can learn, like I say. Anise, what is up? How can I make my comping more melodic? I've been trying to use drop twos, but my comping still sounds very different from the voicings the pros are using. Okay, so there's a spectrum from where you maybe think you are and what the pros are doing, and it's not like you cross over a threshold and you're like, oh my God, I'm pro level. So that's the first thing. So you can look at every day, every week as kind of a chance to develop some different things. But one thing, I'm not going to have time to go through all of them, obviously, but one thing that may be helpful for you besides drop two, which is something that I've been told I do a lot, but I still don't really understand the concept of it, so I don't like to teach it. But one thing for melodic comping as a concept I love to teach is the idea of diatonic movement and how you apply that with melodic ideas. So if we're at E flat major, because it seems like we're there all day today, I don't know why, we'll take that. So if I take a voicing like, which is basically, that's a so what voicing, so we got all fourths with a major third on top, third, sixth, ninth, fifth, major seventh, And then we're going to and think melodically first from the top note because that's the easiest to hear. And the same kind of things that have been. Same kind of simple melodic ideas you might develop as improvising, we're going to do with that shape, all fourths with a major third on top. Well, actually, it doesn't even matter that they're all perfect fourths because that's going to change, but they're all fourths, and the third is going to change too because we're moving diatonically. So now it's a minor third on top, augmented fourth on the bottom. But I'm really... And then the same way you throw a passing note in, you're going chromatically, still moving melodically, diatonically, but throwing a passing note in, which is going to give it some chromaticism, just like... Right. But we're being grounded with that same shape. Now, when we eventually copy, we're going to use other shapes, but we're going to take that concept... that same concept of that top note really guiding us melodically. And the more melodic comping you want to do, remember the easiest thing you can add in, or at least the simplest, is some actual single note melodies. It doesn't have to all be, it can be... There's nothing wrong with doing that. All right, that's cool. Thanks for that question. Melodic comping, I love it, love it. What's up, Colleen? Just came from Adam's DGPS. Hopefully he wasn't too harsh on you as, actually he's never harsh on you guys in there, I don't think. But, okay, melodic comping we did. I'm gonna try to catch up here. Boom, 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 boom. You're welcome, Tyler. Yeah, thanks, you guys. You're giving Duncan some good advice in here, I think. Boom. Do you have any Basebook recommendations for pianists? No, but not specifically. But I would just say, if you're talking about bass lines, learn great bass lines like Percy Heath on Bag's Groove. I mean, Ray Brown on anything, Percy Heath on anything. But take especially tracks that you love. Maybe you never even paid attention to the bass line. But if you love that track and you've heard it a lot, you're going to have such an advantage to transcribing that bass line. And bass lines for pianists, these can be, once you acclimate your ears to that range and to the instrument of the bass, and certainly if you know a little bit about the bass, it can help. And you can always grab a friend, hopefully safely, to show you some things about bass if that would be of help. But if you have some tracks that you love and know that you've never really focused on the bass, you're still going to have an advantage because subconsciously you've been hearing that bass line. So that would be a good one. And then bass lines are kind of doable. Like you can, 3 notes per bar as opposed to who knows what the hell the piano player is playing and comping. Generally single notes, so Ray Brown, Percy Heath, Christian McBride, of course. Christian's got a lot of, all of them have a lot of facility. So, but the main thing is take stuff that you like. Maybe you never even knew who the bass player was. You were listening to some Chick Corea and you were like, focus in on the bass, but start learning those lines. Just take a chorus a day or 4 bars a day or whatever. And that's going to be better than any book. What's up, Dean? Always a treat watching you playing and teaching. I'd like to know over what movements a whole half scale is better to use than a half whole. These are the same notes, diatonically, you're just shifting diatonically to where you start. So from the standpoint of like the technical aspect and the fingering, the same. What I mean from that is like a C half whole and a D flat whole half, or an E flat half whole or a G flat half whole or an E whole. It's all the same thing from a piano standpoint. Broken thirds, broken fifths. But conceptually, that's probably more important and probably what you're asking about. So, and let me make sure I get this right. What movements a whole half and scale is better than? Yeah, I mean, so the whole half is really for that diminished sound coming off of, so the D flat. Ooh, sounds like Debussy. Thank you, Claude. So I'm hearing that diminished triad, and definitely up to the diminished seventh, but also that major seventh and that ninth, right? And then everything that's within that diminished pattern, I mean diminished cycle, whatever the hell they call it. Root 3/5, major 7, or that one's just a little bit vanilla. That's why I like the 7. So that's really what that movement is. And then the half whole is really about a dominant situation where it's resolving somewhere, whether it resolves there or not. So you got C, now C becomes the root. You could still use, it's the same notes and you can use some of the same shapes, but the idea is that it's going to go 5 to 1, or maybe it's a half step sliding down. C half whole, sharp 11, flat 9, sharp 9, 13. It's a B major. Now let's do it on B flat. So that's a B flat half whole. Now to A major. Okay, a couple of ideas there. What's up, Fond or Fond Trout? On moving to New York City, many established musicians would seem to suggest just doing it with such strong competition. My brain conjures images of being vibed into eventual homelessness. How does one feel ready? I mean, I think if you're going to do it, make the jump to do it before you feel like you're ready. If you wait until you feel like you're ready, that may never come. I think that, you know, current world situations notwithstanding, obviously we have to make decisions based upon a unique situation now. But in general, you know, it doesn't really matter what age you are, what level you are, whatever. You want to be able to kind of, I don't know, like temper being realistic with a certain aggressiveness that's really required and rewards you once you put on that mindset of being a little bit aggressive, maybe making that move earlier than you think that you could or are comfortable. That lack of comfort zone really rewards playing this music. So like when you're in New York, nothing magical is going to happen the day you get there. You're not going to get better, but you will go to a situation, and hopefully it won't be the homeless situation. You'll go to a playing situation where you are challenged, most likely, quicker, more often, and in a more heated way than where you're coming from. Now, there's other great jazz cities in the world, so this doesn't have to be New York, and New York seems to always kind of default back to being the place because traditionally, and really for a long time now, it's always been the greatest concentration of really good musicians and playing opportunities, that combination of them. But there's also, because this is such a beloved music to play in, it's such an edifying experience to do it, there's always more people wanting to do it. There's always that heavy competition. So I would say do it when you have that yearning. That's more important than if you think you have the skill or you're comparing yourself with others. Now, you don't want to end up in New York homeless because it's a very difficult place to be homeless. So you've got to have a certain amount of realisticness, but you've got to find that spectrum in there of being aggressive without being homeless. Like, go right past that point, and then I would say go then. What's up, Freder? Oh, thank you very much for the, I said thank you already, but thank you again. Final smile, or final, why am I saying everything French? It's such a French thing. Final smile, thank you for the super chat. That is super cool of you. Really appreciate that. Any ideas for, that's why you're jumping to the front of the line. See how that happens? Any ideas for rock solos? Oh gosh, I mean, rock solos, piano, not a lot come to mind, but I mean, like, well, I mean, thinking about Eddie Van Halen, of course, recently, that solo on, is it on Beat It? It's not on Thriller, it's on the record Thriller. I think it's on Beat It. That's a great rock solo. Like that actually, when I was listening to that record, I was kind of getting into jazz. I mean, I was playing a little bit, but I was more into pop music. And that was a very influential record because, like, they played that track with Eddie Van Halen on the rock stations here in St. Louis where I was growing up. Whereas up to that point, all the hits were only played on, like, the R&B station, but it was played on the rock and the pop station. So that was like a crossover thing. But I think, and I remember it well when I came out, I was like, whoa, it's like all this, like, R&B stuff and Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones, and then it was like Eddie Van Halen kind of playing a rock solo. But that's such a great solo, and it's like a lot of blues in there and stuff too. So that's the first one that comes to mind. Definitely not my area of expertise, but Adam Manis would know something about that. Maybe he's on here. He can chime in. Oh, we got so many. Man, thanks everybody for being here. This is really fun. I wanted to go on, like I said earlier, because I was practicing this morning, then I recorded some lessons, and I just want to be as helpful as I can because I feel the love from just a lot of people, even though everyone's a little bit distant or very distant now. A lot of people are trying to get better, you know, and that's been invigorating to me. I know I've been trying to do that always, but like during this pause period, really just shedding and getting to know a lot of folks, Open Studio members, and just people corresponding. But like there's such a great feeling of like, I want to develop, and I think part of it is like we want to come out of this quarantine period like better, and not only at playing the piano, but able to make great sourdough bread and speak 3 languages and all that. But I think, you know, for the piano and for this instrument and playing jazz, such a great period to kind of look inward and really challenge ourselves. And so, you know, it's always it's funny. I never put myself up to be an expert on anything, but I do know some things that I'm seeing are helping folks, and I love that, and I want to be of help in that way. So this is, just know I'm getting as much out of this as hopefully you guys are. I'm probably getting more. Okay, let me jump back. Tyler, did I answer one? Okay, I'm going to go through yours quick because I might already know. I know in your podcast you and Adam said that there really isn't a right fingering, but I get really lost when it comes to fingering scales in every key with both hands. Do you guys offer a lesson? We do some stuff, especially on the pentatonic course, Jazz Piano Technique, Pentatonic Edition. We actually have everything fingered in all those patterns and scales. But there actually is fingering, and I mean, I came up using the McFerrin scale and arpeggio manual. I highly recommend that to give you fingerings for all of the basic classical scale. I mean, the majors and minors, not necessarily the modes of the scales, as in Dorian and Mixolydian, but you can extrapolate out diatonically all the fingers, pretty much all the fingers you need there, both hands, even in broken thirds and stuff. So I think that when you start with the major and all the different kinds of, you know, harmonic, minor, melodic, minor, ascending and descending. What else? There's minor, major, augmented, not necessarily diminished. Well, yeah, we do have stuff on diminished as well. Like those basic scales, getting those both hands up and down, 4 octaves, broken thirds as well, contrary motion. Like that's going to take you to the promised land, I believe, in terms of what you need for improvisation. We can't work out our fingering in advance for most of the improvisation because we don't know what notes we're going to play, but those scales combined with the arpeggios, the corresponding ones, having some very good solid fingering on that will set you up to be able to hit 80-90% great fingering, to be able to execute your improvisation with the kind of phrasing and flair that you're looking for, to really be able to play what you hear. So I do think that there's great value in really knowing those fingerings. What's up, Adrian? Hello from Hong Kong. Just want to thank you for all these video lessons. My pleasure. You look like Johnny Sins is in his retirement, and that's a compliment. I love your music. Thanks, MJ. All right, I'm going to skip over the non-questions, although they're fun. Jonathan asks, what do I need to practice to play jazz ballad solos? Thank you. Okay, practicing jazz ballad solos, we don't want to look at that as all that different from practicing medium tempo, blues, bebop, or whatever. We're trying to learn to play a story. You want to listen to great ballads. You need a lot of patience, you know, to play ballads. actually playing great, especially kind of traditional, just like 1, 2, say, you know, whichever kind of feel over the ballad. Having really good time is super important. Like we usually think of like, oh, you can just be wishy-washy, and you can, but it has to come from that foundation of ting, ting, ting. So even as we go free, so that when we take a break, that pulse is still going. Because the slower pulse, that's where you can really tell if somebody has good time or not. If you're playing, did you guys hear that? I skipped half a beat. I didn't like doing it, but I did it to demonstrate. You probably didn't notice, but on a ballad, if I were to skip a whole half a beat, it would sound like, you know, like you're having a minor heart attack. So working on your time, same thing, metronome, really paying attention, getting that foot tapping, focusing in, playing along with recordings, you know, can be great that you really like to get that ballad feel. But time, like really pay attention to that. Colleen asks, for 35 weeks I've been trying to figure out what makes your playing so unique. I'm beginning to decide that it's your rhythmic sense, New Orleans. Well, for sure, thank you. And thank you to New Orleans. Like, that was really my formative years. It's still like my musical heart, my musical home. I spent so much time not only there, but playing with great New Orleans musicians and connecting with that very unique tradition. And it's a big part of my playing, but I think it's like, you don't have to live in New Orleans for 15 years like I did. You just have to connect with the music if you like that part. Like, I was playing kind of some stuff. I was like, wow, it's like Debussy. I connected with Debussy's music when I was younger, so that's a part of my playing. The New Orleans thing I just connected with for longer, and not just physically being there, but being with other musicians and listening to it and playing the repertoire and playing it in a certain way, you know. You know, certain things that we just do where it's like, even if I'm not playing like, you know, even if I'm not playing like some actual like New Orleans repertoire, if I just play a blues, like little things, it sounds contrived because I'm thinking about doing it, but it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, as opposed to like and of 4 or 1 or and of 1. Boom, boom. That bass drum on 4, that's like just such a part. It's just one way of playing, but it's just a big part of like the way that I feel a lot of different ways of playing jazz, like different styles, different approaches. That still like permeates all of it. And that's the way a lot of New Orleans players do. They don't check their New Orleans vibe at the door just because they're playing bossa nova or a samba or whatever. It's like all part of like how they feel the music, and it's a very flexible and invigorating and interesting way of playing, I think. So I really, you know, very so thankful to New Orleans and the tradition there, because once you link up with that, it gives you so much for sure. Eskil asked, what did a usual day of practice look like when you were in music college? I was a very bad example because I was not in music college very long, but I was practicing a lot then. So I was really practicing a lot of classical music when I was at conservatory. A lot of demands because my teacher was like, you're behind. I was his only freshman student, maybe only freshman or sophomore, and I kind of got recommended to get in through sort of a connection. I wasn't really supposed to be there with that high level of a teacher, but I was aggressive about it. So, but I was like the bottom of the barrel in his class. So, not class, we were all just, you know, private studies, but then you have a group performance or whatever. So like I was freshman, I was the bottom, I was on the bench. And so I was just practicing a lot of repertoire, and it was always like, you know, like a Baroque, there'd be like a Bach, maybe something from the Well-Tempered Clavier, a modern piece. I was doing a lot of Bartók then, something from the Romantic period, or maybe Impressionistic, Debussy or something, and then like a Beethoven sonata. And so that was like, and then all the technical work that went along with that. And then I was doing a bunch of jazz stuff like transcribing too. So I was definitely that was like a very fertile period for practicing because I was so heavy into the classical thing as well. Tortog, what's up? When someone says play a Lydian or Phrygian chord, how are you spelling them? Sharp 4 or 1 sharp 4 or 1 flat 2 flat 7. When someone says play a Lydian, sharp 4. Yeah, definitely sharp 4. I mean, flat 5, sharp 4, same thing, but I think functionally it's a little bit, because like the 4th, like the 5th is still in it. If that's what you mean. You probably mean something deeper than I'm understanding. And then Phrygian. Definitely flat 2 for sure. And flat 7. How can I not hate thumb black keys when needed? How can I hate? Oh, you mean, okay. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, keep your thumb off, but it's going to happen sometimes. And look, I'm a hypocrite because I play, look at that, bam, thumb. So it's preferred not to, but certain situations, and these are not like just exceptions, like as in one in 1,000. These actually happen quite often. The idea is that, and maybe we can get, yeah, let's get this angle going. So the idea is that when we put our thumb on, we're going further into the key bed, and we don't want to be going back and forth. So if there's a time when we're doing it, we want to go up and stay. So that was like a line over E flat, as opposed to, so if I try to keep the wrist back and keep the thumb from going on the black key, I could do that, but that's more disruptive than just moving in a little bit and then playing that E flat. Oh, you know what? You can probably see better over here anyway. So, yeah. So, as opposed to, right? So I'm moving in a little from the beginning, or maybe even as I'm playing it, in anticipation to know that I'm going to use that thumb. Now, if I'm playing, that's why it's so important, like with the different keys, we want to hear sometimes the same phrase, but we've got to have the control to be able to make it sound how we want it to sound. And that with the thumb is very different than the second finger. It feels different, but we want it to sound the same. Or maybe we don't want it to sound the same, but we want to have that kind of control. So the main thing is just kind of using your wrist as your guiding force, so that when it just doesn't make sense to not use your thumb on the black key, be prepared for when you do it and try not to go in and out too often. Sorry, I'm going, hey, what's up, Kim? DGPS present. Okay, I'm going, I gotta speed up. I feel like I gotta speed up. I mean, I'm here for the minute if you guys want to, but I'm going back in time. What is Devin asked, the largest interval you can reach with your left hand? That would be a 10th. I do not have a huge like ability, and I can't reach like any of those. So obviously that and the minor, no problem. But that's a stretch for me. I don't know if you can see that here. Like that's why I'm so far back in here. I can't even really do it up in here. So I'm lucky to kind of barely have that. But, you know, breaking them up, because everyone's always like, I can't reach a 10th. I mean, I can only reach some of them. So, and I figure out ways to do. Actually, I can reach that, but a lot of times I'll break it up anyway. Right? That's almost as good as, or catch it with the right hand. I mean, there's always different ways to fake it. And sometimes they get lead to interesting places. Okay? What is the key to samba playing, in your opinion? Keep up the great work and greetings from Germany. Thanks, Lucas. I don't really know. I mean, I should say I'm not an expert on that. I think part of it is like, is not getting too like crazy with like, why do I keep playing the same? Oh, because. Like you want to get the syncopation, but it's different than a bossa nova. But I don't know if I'm allowed to say this because we have some great Brazilian instructors here at Open Studio. I highly recommend checking out Elio Alves' course with us because he explains this way better and more authentically than me. But you were thinking about a bossa nova groove like. We're taking that and speeding that up as being your entry point into the samba. That's not a precise thing, but that's a good entry point for sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of like, what's a... Like, there is an entry point there at that tempo too from what I was talking about with the New Orleans thing before. Like, I like to emphasize that 4. And maybe that's just my little excuse for connecting with New Orleans music. But as you're learning lines and comping, try just throwing it across like half notes as opposed to trying to be, you know, trying to get too fancy with it. Just nice, you know. And you're thinking about that guitar, those kind of rhythms and putting them there, but keeping that bass line simple. I hate talking about stuff I'm not good at. I mean, I can kind of play Brazilian stuff just because I've heard it a lot and I love it. I'm just not a great authentic explainer of it. But thanks, Jerome. There used to be a great video on YouTube of your trio with Bob Hurst and Hutch at Disney's. Do you remember that gig? Bob taught at the school. Oh, cool. So you must have gone to U of M, Wolverines. I do not have that video, and I don't know where it is. I remember the gig, though. We had so much fun that night. That was awesome. Oh, Tortalk says George Benson, White Rabbit album. Yeah, and also, you know, like Lou Donald, there's a great playlist on Spotify called like Blue Note Jazz Classics. That's a good one because nobody wants to listen to the whole album these days anyway, especially a rocker, perhaps, I don't know. But that playlist I would highly recommend. It starts out, Lou Donaldson, whatever that blues is. Lou Donaldson, Papa Lou. It's just a great like groove and playlist. We're listening to that all the time in the house. My wife loves it, but it's a really good one for an entry point, and it's high quality tracks. I mean, just killing stuff. Maybe some Robert Glasper. I mean, some more contemporary stuff that we're not like, it has to be 1957, Jazz Police, you know. I don't know. What's up, Reed? Question, love your playing, Peter. I'm primarily a trumpet player, wondering how I can best use the piano to help me memorize new tunes. Yeah, so, you know, take advantage of what the instrument gives you, and just like with the trumpet, take advantage of that. There's some things, as great as this instrument is, I think there's some things about, say, the trumpet or any single line horn that have an advantage over this in that it forces you to really think about just a single line as you learn a tune and how that fits within the form. So you might do that on the trumpet and then look to the piano. So say if you were doing, you know, giant steps, and you wanted to, you know, do like you say, use the piano to help. So you've got the trumpet to learn that melody, and you're thinking about the piano just as the harmonic movement and the melody of the root. So you're going just shell, And I know I'm giving you a hard tune, so like if your piano chops aren't all there, you can do this over a blues too. It's the same concept. But you're using the voice leading of the piano, the harmonic movement, and the melodic stuff that implies with your voice leading on the shell. And the root movement for the resolutions of the chords. So you've got major, dominant, 5 to 1, 5 to 1. You start to make those connections. Man, this piano's going out of tune. Woo, it was tuned last week. Anyway, weather's changing. So kind of finding the things that are harder on the trumpet, but don't feel like you have to do the melody. Leave that to the trumpet. Then you kind of, with your ears, can make the connections between them. Maybe even a little bit of this. I remember seeing Roy Hargrove do this all the time, like playing on the trumpet while he was playing. I mean, he could really play piano, doing stuff with his left hand along with that too. So you could try that. Thanks, Dalio. Dalio-san. How do you recommend, this is from Saladini, how do you recommend integrating scales into your solos? Also, what do you recommend to start networking? Ethernet cable. That's a joke, but I did just hook up an Ethernet cable. That's what the stream is coming to you from via networking. Integrating scales into your solos. So I never did this a lot, but I do think it can be effective because some really good players I know did this. So you might take, well, say giant steps. Where you're taking the scale. Okay, now let's not do that because it's moving too quick. Okay, that's not moving enough. Okay, let's take all the things you are, and we're going to incorporate scales into our soloing. So a lot of you probably know that, where you're just scale running, I guess they call it, or whatever. But even as you're learning to do that, you can do it in a more imaginative way than that, incorporating the other elements. I mean, if you need to just concentrate on that, that's fine. And there's so many different ways to mix it up, but chromaticism and changes of direction are kind of the easiest ones. You can do these one at a time, so it's like. That's kind of no change of direction until you actually are turning around, but it's more like. So it's like just one note down, and then you kind of keep going. Those little things you can incorporate as you're doing your scale running will keep it from just being like, literally just playing the scale. Also starting on different notes, so you might say I'm going to start on the 7th of every scale. And you can do that starting on different beats. I mean, there are a lot of different possibilities once you start thinking creatively like that. But they're all ways that you're putting the scale in to your improvisation. Bisco, I feel there is value in lifting other instruments like sax players to work on articulation, piano for range as a guitarist. What instruments are your favorite to lift and why? So that's a great point. Like, I love learning trumpet solos. And it wasn't necessarily that I had like this master plan of why. It was more just like it was a lot of the stuff I was listening to when I was getting into like, wow, I want to figure out how to do that. So I was definitely doing piano stuff, but then I would get frustrated because it was just hard to hear, even though I'm a pianist. Just multiple notes, and like it's always easier to start with single lines. So trumpet solos, Miles Davis learned a bunch of those. Clifford Brown. On Sander. Anything you like, basically. I don't think the instrument is much. I mean, you've got, guitarists for range, yeah, but going to piano. But I think that what are your favorites are what you should be lifting. There doesn't need to be a calculating thing of like 20%, 20% this. You want to do a lot of stuff on your instrument for sure, like if you're a pianist learning piano solos. But yeah, articulation, like you say, and like all these things from other guitar solos are great for pianists to learn. It really can open up a whole nother world. So there's no wrong answer there. Just stick to stuff you like, if possible. Yes, Reed says all the answers are in the recordings. Absolutely, absolutely. Clark Terry, imitate, assimilate, innovate. There you go. Taylor asks, how do you create interesting lines for bebop diatonically, not passing tones or enclosure? Bebop, you know, I think that, yeah, getting away from these kind of specific techniques, although they're very valuable and valid, you know, enclosures and diatonic movement and chromatic stuff, but really trying to get to more the spirit of what makes great bebop playing. And to me, you know, it's a certain freedom with that as much as these like harmonic things are interesting, but that melodic and rhythmic connections, like how do you get to that? Like it's very much a step, thinking about melodic patterns based upon rhythmic ideas, like the way a drummer would solo over a 4-bar break, and the way it would be accented. Like, so you might take like a Philly Joe Jones, step up it up, step it up, bet it, skid up, stack it, those fills, and create some lines based upon those very specific things. Where you're not necessarily thinking about, I'm going to do an enclosure, I'm going to turn this direction or whatever, but you're just letting the rhythm guide your melodic flair within that kind of style. I think that kind of playing can be great, and that can become part of your kind of improvisational personality. And like that's how we can be like, I mean, I'm very much like my foundation is very much in several things, bebop, blues, New Orleans, but none of those, I think, they're all just like things I draw upon. I'm not like a bebop police kind of like, you got to do the enclosure. I didn't even know a lot of that stuff when I learned to play a lot of it. So it doesn't have to be that theoretical, but when you can take a sound that's simple, like a drum fill, Philly Joe Jones, very much recommend that. That's 2-bass hit, Miles Davis. I think it's on, is it Milestones? I'm not sure, 2-bass hit. Someone will know. But you can take something like that and then extrapolate the vibe of bebop playing from just rhythm and then apply that over to your lines. I think that can take you far for sure. Walking bass lines, question mark. Yes, answer is yes. I'm not sure what that was in regards to. Janet asked tips for practicing something until it feels finished. I never get to the point where I think, oh, I know that now. This is disheartening. Do not be disheartened, Janet, because, first of all, I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember that well. When you're practicing something, you know, depending, like say if you're learning a solo that's got kind of a beginning and an end, or like learning, you know, some drop two situations or whatever that may seem more conceptual, like if you're practicing the right stuff, even 50% of the time, that's going to be stuff that you can draw on for a long time, and it's going to evolve in your playing. So you shouldn't be disheartened because you don't know when you're going to when it's going to pay off. It shouldn't pay off right away. It shouldn't be like, I mean, you should feel you've gotten to some kind of end of the chapter, but it shouldn't feel like it's final. Because like even learning a solo, once you get to the end of it, or say you're going to learn one chorus, that's your goal, and you get to the end of it, you've learned that, but it's not like, oh, now that's unlocked this, at the same time, this new way of playing. The new way of playing will evolve. Like say it takes you 5 days to learn one chorus of a Miles Davis solo. At the end of those 5 days, you'll know the solo, and there's specific things that you'll get from that, but those things will evolve and reveal themselves to you over weeks and months and really years. Like that's a part of you now, but it doesn't like just snap in like, ow, I can do this. I mean, there are certain elements that are more superficial, like certain licks that you'll have. But the deeper stuff because it's deeper, kind of comes out slower, which is great, you know. So you got to just trust the process, enjoy the process. Don't get disheartened that you're not getting all the profits right away. It's like putting money in the bank. It's going to come slowly, but you're doing the right stuff, so it will come for sure. But yeah, don't get too hung up on like when it's finished and when it's not. There's usually no like exact like this is finished. And you want to revisit stuff, like good stuff to practice, come back to it. Like that's the great thing. Once you know it, it's not know it and you move on. That's a fun thing to revisit and review, and that's a way to further unlock the great benefits that practicing that technical thing or solo or tune or whatever, learning a tune in another key or whatever. There's all different ways that they can really pay off, I think. Isaac is asking, what have you learned from playing with the great drummers like Brian Blade and such? Yeah, okay, I mean, great drummers that come to mind that I played with a lot. Brian Blade, Greg Hutchinson, Terry Gully, Billy Kilson, and this is in no particular order, and apologies, I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out. Ulysses Owens, Carl Allen. You know, it's not that different. Let me think about something specific for drummers that's just not the same as every other great musician. You learn, you know, the stuff that's kind of constant for all great musicians, not particularly drummers, just like an intensity of just like love of and commitment to the music that transcends just their particular talent. So somebody like Brian Blade, it's not just that like, wow, he can do all this great Brian Blade stuff. Of course he can. I knew Brian when no one knew that was Brian Blade stuff. That was just him playing, and we were trying to buy a gig in New Orleans with our little trio. But he already had that stuff. Just people might have recognized it later. But like his intensity in terms of his commitment to the music, that's something that just resonated in a way and is, you know, to be around that just reinforces what I've had and helped me build up mine. I mean, and hopefully we helped each other because we kind of were right at the same age and the same development period. But I mean, the idea that like we're not at the promised land in terms of our playing, especially when we're in our early 20s, but we're going to act like we are, not as in being cocky or whatever, but we're going to commit ourselves. I mean, we used to practice for hours. Brian Blake, Chris Thomas, and we had a trio. Before the Josh Redman quartet and all that, we had a trio in New Orleans, and we literally were trying to pay to do gigs. We would just do free gigs. But, I mean, we would just basically practice all the time, working up arrangements, and we had some little minor success, and we had gigs playing with, you know, Jermaine Basil and Victor Goins and Nicholas Payne, great musicians, but you know, the commitment was always there. And so somebody like Brian Blade and all these other drummers, it's the same thing like other musicians. Now, specific to drummers like Brian and Greg Hutchinson and Billy Kilson and you know, Carl Allen, these masters, like something that I really learn and appreciate and you see as a through current with all of them, Edu Ribeiro, who I've only played with a couple times, but is just amazing. Like, they all have an understanding of form and architecture of music that is on such a high level that, like, you can it's almost like you're getting into a little backpack with them, and they're taking you, even if you weigh more than them. Can you imagine getting on Brian Blade's back? He's like a little skinny guy, but he can do that musically because, like, he understands the music on such a higher level than even the other great musicians around. Greg Hutchinson's he's always been like this. We first played together as teenagers. It's like, they have such an innate understanding of form and balance within the form and how to lay that out like you're the architect constantly. That's kind of a unique thing, I think, to great drummers. You hear that with Philly Joe Jones and Tony Williams and Zigaboo Modalest and all these, you know, different styles and everything. So that's probably the thing that I learned the most. So I started thinking that's just a drummer thing, but I was like, no, I can learn from that. They might have an advantage in that the great drummers seem to have a lock on that kind of mastery, but I've definitely learned a lot from them, and like I love taking on that drummer's mentality towards the architecture, towards the form, towards balance. So, you know, much in the same way, like vocalists, a great vocalist like, you know, a Diane Reeves or a Dinah Washington. I was just listening to Dinah Washington this morning, or a Cassandra Wilson. Like seem to have a lock on the understanding of the connection between the lyric and the melody and the vibe of the music at all times. Like that's their thing. But I learned that from being around great vocalists. Brian Owens, wonderful vocalist here in St. Louis, has that knack. But we can learn that too. We might not ever get to the level they do, but we can take that on. So like all these experiences, I've loved playing with different types, of instruments, and the masters have that kind of through current, that similarity between all of them, all these great drummers with that, and very fortunate to be the beneficiary of that. Reese says, can you please explain harmonic and melodic minors? Uh-oh, I lost your question. Oh, it jumped down. Oh man, I've got so much. I'm starting to get overwhelmed. Help! Okay, harmonic and melodic minors. Now, I may be wrong on this. I'm not great. Harmonic minor, isn't that? Flat 6 and major 7th. And then melodic minor, ascending, major 7th, major 6th, and major 7th. So it's just one note different. And then melodic minor coming down, flat 7th and flat 6th. And the harmonic minor. And then this minor, major minor is what I call that. Does that have a name? But that's an important one. And then, of course, Dorian. Dominant 7th and 6th. Quentin, what in practicing can set you apart from other pianists practicing for a jazz piano competition? Focus. Focus can set you apart. Like that is focus, drive, and commitment. I mean, that's so much more important than talent and where you are now. Talent, as in natural talent, which is never totally natural. It's always like a product of our environment, I think, in a lot of things. But it's not necessarily like, oh, I can reach a 10th, so I'm talented. No, not that kind. Commitment and focus, like that combination can transcend everything. So the great thing about that is like that's in our control. Like we can develop that. Now, some people have more of a talent for focusing, but if you trace that back, that's usually more of an environmental thing. They were either taught that or they took on that persona. I don't know that people are like little babies are born focused. Maybe. That's just way above my pay grade. But I know you can improve it because I've done it. So I can be very unfocused at times, but I've trained myself and really continue to work on this to this day, being able to focus for whatever amount of time I need to. Now, there's limits to that, and the fun thing about it is you get older, you start to learn those, so that's how you can kind of optimize your time. So for me, it's like I know how long I can focus. I know what times of day, usually, I can focus the best, so I can push the things that I really want to work on, be that at the piano or other things, reading, working on open studio, whatever it is, into those times, so that I know I can get the most out of that hour or whatever. But I also, being a pianist, I've had a limited time to instruments before, where you've only got an hour, maybe it isn't your optimal time, or 30 minutes. Like, what are you going to do? Can you get right into focusing right away? So that's the big differentiator. Certainly when you're practicing for a competition, you need to be even more focused, hyper-focused. You want to be thinking about being hyper-focused. So that means saying no to a lot of things, saying no to everything while you're practicing outside of the building is on fire. But getting into that practice of saying no to things so that you can focus. Because you can't focus if you've got too many different things going on. It's just not possible. So, Tom asked, tips for improvisation, cool voicings, good patterns. I mean, I've showed a few here. Come on. Cool voicings? I don't know. I think so what? Everyone's like, cool voicing. So what? Learn that in every key. That's a pretty cool one. But, some of this stuff, like I always think about these voicings that are like weird triads and stuff. Like, that's a B major triad, whatever, first inversion, and a B minor triad, second inversion. But it's really just like, but then you put some different roots on it. But it's all within an octave. That can be kind of cool. I don't know, man. There you go. when can I remove the root and when I can't. No hard and fast rule here, but try not to get, I recommend not getting too stuck into one way of thinking about this. So in other words, it's like, okay. All rootless voicings. Well, I played one rooted voicing there. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can cycle in and out of it. Rootless, rooted, rootless, rooted, rootless, rooted, rootless. You can go back and forth. But as you're practicing, you're probably going to be doing one or the other. But then always give yourself a chance to practice on something maybe like a blues that you know really well, going back and forth. And try to go seamlessly. Okay. How do you recommend networking with other musicians? You know, now's a time when it's definitely more, there's less in person, obviously, networking, but use that to your advantage. So many ways to network with anybody, anywhere. Like, you can reach any musician. Well, there's one I'm trying to reach, Jeff Goldblum, if anybody knows Jeff. I'm trying to get him on the podcast to do an interview with him. He's. Have you seen him doing this on YouTube? You need to check that out. Cantaloupe Island, Jeff Goldblum style. But I mean, in theory, we can network and reach anybody now through social media. I mean, unless somebody's just totally insulated from the online world. But I think that, you know, a lot of times we think, you know, online networking and online interaction with people is not that deep. It's just different. And I think that if you think about that, we're not always going to be locked down forever. There's going to be a chance to travel and meet people. You can open up your network to a bigger swath than just your hometown, because you probably will have a chance to go to New York or to go to wherever. So open up your world, and like there's so much you can do networking-wise and connecting, so that when things do open up, you'll be ready to further solidify those networks and those connections later. But I mean, like, be helpful to people. Don't just be like, what can I get from them by networking? Like, what do you have to offer somebody? Like, start with that. I think it's very like, a lot of times we're like, what's in it for me with networking? That's okay, and that's like kind of growth in terms of like, what can I grow to become? But also, like, we all have things to offer the world, and I think that this is for me, it's been a very introspective time to realize, like, a lot of the things I have to offer the world are here, and it's easy for me. Not to say that, like, you know, getting to this point was easy, but to show it to you guys, whatever I have. I'm not Herbie Hancock, but I've got some stuff that I know that can help a lot of you. So, like, it's my responsibility to give that to you guys and to help and to serve. So we all have that with something. So offer that up, and then that's a very strong way to network and to get to know people, where you're giving them something. All right, I'm going to jump a little bit because I'm just so behind here, and I'm going to get some lunch at a certain point. How's everybody doing? You know what? I'm going to jump down to the bottom. I'm going to do a horrible thing. Jeff Goldberg, are you hearing? Jeff Goldberg? Wait, what's his name? Not Jeff Gold. That sounds weird. Jeff Goldberg. Goldblum. What the heck is his name? Somebody help me out here. Why did you switch from Steinway to Bozendorf? I did not switch from Steinway to Bozendorf. To be clear, it's a long story. But basically, this instrument presented itself, and we were able to, at Open Studio here, acquire this instrument at a fantastic deal, and it's an amazing instrument. I was not out looking for a Bozendorf. I am a Steinway artist and continue to be, and there's a Steinway sitting right there, and I have a Steinway at home, my own personal instrument that I love. But I love this instrument too, so it's really not a switch. And you know, when you're a pianist, especially, like, this has been the only time these last 8 months or whatever that I've played like one or two, or actually 3 instruments, the one at home too, kind of constantly. Normally when you're traveling, when you're touring, playing different situations, you're playing whatever's there, you know. I love the Fazioli. I love some Mason and Hammonds. I love Yamahas, you know. I love great instruments that are just set up well, but this one is special. It's out of tune right now, and I see the humidifiers off. We're trying to stabilize because the temperature's been changing a lot. Like, it was in the 30s the other day, and it's 84 degrees today, and So we're trying to get things stabilized. But this is just an amazing instrument. I love this Bozendorf, but I love that Steinway too. Jeff Goldblum, that's what I write. I was like, Goldblum, like Jeff Goldberg. Sounds cool too. I grant the Steinway wore out. Yeah, it just needs some work. You know, it just needs some work. It's going to happen. Basically, the amount of work that Steinway needs is more than the cost that we got this Bozendorfer for. That's kind of how it worked out. Effective practice schedule look like. I think I said I got into some of that. John asked, do you construct? I'm going to do like 2 or 3 more, okay? And then I'm going to get out of here. Boom. But if you guys like these, I'll start doing them again. I'm like kind of set up with the, you know, we got this, we got, although that's not really worthwhile. That's kind of weird. We call that the doppio, but we got that happening. We've got, what do we have here? Doom. This one, I like that view. There we go. Okay. Lewis asks, wondering how you balance playing what you want to play with what you think record labels, audiences want to hear. I mean, you know, I've never been that worried about record labels, partly, well, maybe that's why I've never had like a big record deal. Although, you know, I've made some records on Max Jazz, which I would consider I think it's one of the most consequential record labels of the last 30 years, 40 years. When did it start? It wasn't that long ago. But it's kind of been absorbed by Mac Avenue, which I think is a wonderful label now. So I guess those recordings are officially on there. But I made a record, I think first 20 years ago. I made one of Max Jazz's very first recordings called Something Unexpected, and then did a couple more recordings for them. But I never was like, what does the record label want? I was just making music. Now, audiences, I do cater to, I think, a little bit more, although it's been like a continuum. So when I started out, I remember when I was first up in New York and getting a chance to play some, and it was kind of like the Young Lions, early 90s, late 80s kind of thing. That's what they were calling us, Young Lions. I don't know why. Silly. But like we were very kind of like, you know, we wore suits and we're like, we don't care about the audience. You know, we're coming for the integrity of the music, and like, you better go to school to learn what you want to keep up with us. We're going to do what we want to do, whether you clap or not. Kind of a idealistic situation that I think a lot of young people can get into. I definitely have like moved more away from that, but also like, because I was in New Orleans right after that, I was actually already I was kind of back and forth New Orleans in a while, and New Orleans is such a like, it's kind of more of a people-pleasing kind of musical culture. Like, if it feels good and people are dancing even playing jazz, then that's a good thing. So like, I always sort of gravitated towards that as well as to more of like the hardcore New York thing, but took a combination. So I've always been very interested in what the audience wants to hear and what's going to be pleasing to them. But that doesn't mean you don't challenge the audience. I love challenging the audience, but I try to find a way to kind of combine those things in a way that's effective, and that kind of becomes the balance. It's like, how do you challenge them, not challenging them by confusing them, but making it feel good, but giving them something different each time, so that even if you were to say play the same tune, they were like, wow, I loved it even more, or in a different way than last time, not keep it the same. All right, we're going to do 2 more. Oh no, I hate seeing RIPs. I'm not even going to say them because hopefully it's not true, but I just want to see some good ones. These are all great questions, but some of them I'm just not as good at answering. Lucas asks, how do you integrate voicings you learn and integrate them into your playing? The best way I could recommend with this is to take a voicing and, you know, first would be to take it and learn it in all keys, so you're looking at it chromatically, but then either right before or after, or maybe even at the same time, depending on your practice flow and where you are proficiency-wise, is do the same thing but in line with some kind of progression. So not to think too statically about a voicing. So like a very traditional and important voicing is the 6-note voicing. So G7, G13, 7, these are all fourths. You're stacking up fourths diatonically from the dominant 7. So 7th, 3rd, 13th, 9th, 5th, root on top. That's a very important voicing. And when I first learned this many years ago, I was like, wow, that's great. Then I was like, I don't want to play that because everybody plays that. But now I play it all the time because it works and it's good. That's why everybody plays it. But you want to move towards that voicing, or whatever voicing it is. Being able to effectively play it, learn the shapes in all keys. That's one of the best ways to internalize, to even automate the usage, not the usage, automate the understanding and the learning of a voicing. So, because we don't play guitar where we can just take a voicing without an open string and just move our hands like this, we have to change the shape. Fingering. And that also gives you an entry point to a lot of effective chromatic things that you can do, you know. Melodic things that you can throw in there by understanding the chromatic movement. Look, we talked about earlier diatonic movement, but this is chromatic, and you're learning it in all the different keys. But then you don't want to fall out of thinking about voicings. Like there's never just a cool voicing. There's a cool voicing, but it's like, where is it coming from and where is it going? So what voicing? That's coming from here and going to that. So that's its own thing. So instead of just learning this in all keys, you would learn the 2 voicings. 2-5-1, one of the simpler ones. Okay, so you want to hear it and conceptualize it. And these are rooted voicings, but it would be no different for a rootless voicing. I guess we'll start with that one, with the so what. Yeah, let's do that to keep it consistent. So all fourths with the major third on top, D minor, and then G7. But we're just going to think about 2. 2 minor 11, and then that's a nice voicing, right? But what's important about it is where it's coming from and going. F triad to E triad, down a half step. So that when we go F minor, A flat triad, down a half step, we don't even have to think about what key we're in. Because we're learning, and we already know all our triads, because we learned that first in all the different inversions. So learning voicings, cool voicings, but learning them in line, learning them chromatically, diatonically, and also in line with some simple voicings, effective with really good voice leading, will take you far. All right, I'm going to do one more question. I'm going to ask you guys to like this video if you're enjoying it, and consider subscribing to the Open Studio channel. We're going to be going live much more often than we have been, and we go live a lot. I don't know if you know of a gentleman named Adam Manis, but he's liable to go live at any time. Not always here at Open Studio, but often. And he's going to be doing more. I'm going to be doing more. We're set up now. We're in this for the long haul or the short haul or whatever it is. But if you like this video and if you subscribe to our channel and even turn on notifications, that is going to let you know in hopefully a gentle way, not in a, wow, I'm practicing and all my devices are ringing, but might send you an email. I don't know how they do it on YouTube, actually, because I have all my notifications off. But if you want to know when we're going live for things that aren't announced, turn on the notifications, see how you like that. We promise we're not going to spam you with videos. We're just going to give you stuff that hopefully is helpful like today. So, like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That would be awesome. And thank you guys for being here. Like, this means so much to me. Like I said earlier, this is like, I'm getting way more out of this than you guys, so I really appreciate it. I'm really happy to be here to serve and to give you guys some hopefully useful information. If this is your first time on the channel, my name is Peter Martin, and this is Open Studio. And you know, the Open Studio channel is just all about tutorials, some live performances. We got drums, we've got bass, we got piano. We're very piano-centric, not gonna lie. But we have some world-class drummers as part of the Open Studio family as well. Edu Ribeiro, Ulysses Owens, Greg our OG instructor here, one of the greatest drummers on the planet. And then, you know, Jeff Keyser is part of the artist roster, Elio Alves on piano, Adam Manis, who many of you know, Fred Hirsch is doing master classes for us now. So we got a lot of different things happening, but it's all kind of within the community realm of getting better at playing jazz. That's really what it is for all instruments. And we're very community oriented, and that's how we do it here at YouTube. So I'm going to ask one more question. So I got it now. It's the pressure's on. It's the last question. It's got to be a good one, right? Curfew 5 minutes. Goldblum. Yeah. Okay. I was like Goldberg. Goldenberg. Okay. John says, I'm just jumping in there. John says, hello, Peter. How can I make my solo lines sound more lyrical? Sing along with your lines as you practice. Don't play anything when you're practicing for an hour straight that you can't sing. So this is going to limit you to a range of your voice. That's okay. But if you sing everything that you play, now you might not be able to play what you hear wherein you're conceptualizing something you'd sing and then it just comes out. That's the goal. But this will get you to that promised land quicker. But if you're singing along with what you're doing, and it doesn't have to just be something overtly like overtly lyrical like that. It could be so, like, it's hard to tell if I'm leading my singing with my playing or my playing with my singing. When you stop playing, your singing takes over, so you want to do a little bit of that. But you don't want to play anything that you can't sing. That'll force you into improvising in a lyrical way. And I can't tell you how important that is. So this is a great question to end on, because this kind of practicing can be such a game changer for many different ways. And you can sing ahead. Like, if you're not sure how to match up the notes with your singing, if you're not there yet, sing ahead of your playing, because you can probably sing something more lyrical than you can play. So this kind of practice, and you know, it can be over blues, it can be over a tune, ballad, anything, can be so helpful, especially for piano, which can be a non-lyrical percussion machine if we're not careful. So if you're a vocalist, you don't have to practice this because you're practicing your vocals. But piano, guitar, very important. So yeah, there you go. Thank you guys so much. I'm sorry I didn't get to everything, but we'll do this again. And hope everybody has a great day. Stay safe. And I'm trying to think of the next live thing. What is today, Thursday? Oh, tomorrow night. If you want to hear me just play and talk less, every Friday night, I do something called Shelter in Place, which is a live concert, 8 p.m. Eastern time. That's New York City time, 8 p.m. every Friday night. I think this is week 32 or 33 or something coming up. I haven't missed a Friday yet. I'm going to be there tomorrow for about an hour, a little bit over an hour. So I'd love to see you. It's actually on the Peter Martin YouTube channel, but it's very easy to find. Just search Peter Martin. And until next time, happy practicing.